Hi, my name is Pasha, and I'd like to talk about my case study on Agile transformation at Unbox Robotics. This case study goes to show that enterprise agility can be unlocked by designing enterprises as complex adaptive systems, and that Scrum at scale supports this in a very natural sense. About myself, I've been in the industry for just over 16 years. More than a decade of my career has focused on consulting, especially in agile transformation. I've been running a company since 2017 where we've produced technology solutions as well as business and process transformation for some premium clients. I hold an MSc in Advanced Software Engineering from the University of Sheffield in the UK, where I specialized in agile practices back in 2007. The company in question here is our client, Unbox Robotics. At the time of this engagement, the company was just over 3 years old with about 150 to 200 employees and an initial funding of $7 million. The company develops products focused at order sorting and order consolidation in warehouses, which is utilized by logistics, e-commerce companies, and warehouse companies. Credit where it's due. Any successful agile transformation requires active participation from the leadership. So to that end, the credit goes entirely to the leadership team at Unbox Robotics for their courage to walk this path. After an initial on-site exploratory exercise, we identified specific goals we wanted to achieve through this engagement. We were up against multiple deadlines. And on the other side, teams weren't coordinated, which impacted the speed of delivery. Overall processes were inefficient due to heavy bureaucracy and departmental structuring of the engineering division. And we also entered this transformation with limited time and budget, and the time being about 6 months. The first step we took in the transformation was to create a transformation backlog, and we used the Tuckman model to define the backlog. The Tuckman model has very convenient stages: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. So we put the backlog through the lens of the Tuckman model, and we also created a process which would take each agile practice that we identified for the company through a level of maturity. So identifying the transformation backlog items and taking them through a process of maturity over time. That was the theme of achieving our goal. An underlying view to our transformation was that reductionist hierarchical techniques are slowing down companies. So in our case, we wanted to see agile teams as self-organizing independent agents in a broader system where order could emerge from interactions as opposed to dogmatic transformations. Naturally, we broke down functional silos, departments into cross-functional teams aimed at producing value, realignment of people and process around purpose. And we gave these teams the power of Scrum at the team level. Once we had all of these teams structured and Scrum made consistent at the team level, we were able to have a Scrum of Scrums, which became our reference model, which we could then scale horizontally or vertically across other units of the company. Something unique that turned out with our transformation was that we didn't necessarily see the need for cross-functional teams per se. In our Scrum of Scrums, we had cross-functional teams as well as specialist teams, which supported each other to produce continuous product increment. Back at the team level, we were making sure that the teams are applying themselves in a manner that is consistent with the Scrum guide. So they're able to produce their own increments of their products consistently. And they're not just being consistent, but they're also accelerating. Obviously, the next step was to deal with cross-team coordination issues. We instituted a scaled daily Scrum, which had its own scaled daily Scrum backlog in the form of a Scrum board, where Scrum Masters met right after their specific team's daily stand-ups. So having that cross-team impediments board allowed them to visualize and resolve impediments and escalate them as quickly as possible. And again, we didn't really need to have our teams to be structured as cross-functional across the board. Some of these teams were cross-functional, some of them were specialist teams. And the reason was compliance. In compliance-heavy industries, this is something that as Agile coaches, we might need to be careful of. You don't want to take a dogmatic approach and just have teams as cross-functional for the sake of them being cross-functional. We need to strike a balance between compliance versus advantage of autonomy. So this could be true in the healthcare industry, the automation industry, maybe the defense industry, and so on. So Scrum at scale brings that yin and yang to let that happen. As far as the backlog is concerned, we saw it as a continuous process of alignment, prioritization, and decomposition. We first instituted executive metascrum, and a metascrum identified internal stakeholders. That's where the alignment occurred. And for the decomposition, we adopted the user story mapping technique, which visualized the alignment across the organization at scale, right where the work was being done on the floor. So the user story mapping exercise was more like a radical alignment exercise, which produced a artifact, which we called the user story map at scale, which also served as the shared enterprise backlog. And this backlog was a picture of the user's needs across the system horizontally and across time vertically, where each swim lane was a sprint. Now that multiple leaders across the company were working on parallel change initiatives, we wanted to bring them all together and align them. So the executive action team served that purpose very well. where we could bring leaders who are working on parallel change initiatives and allow them to work on shared goals as opposed to cross purposes. The transformation itself faced primarily on the P&T division, but it spilled out to the other divisions as well. So naturally, the EAT naturally got formed at the intersection of those three divisions. In this picture, you might call it the LAT, but as the organization evolves, the LAT will slowly move towards the center as the organization goes further towards a supersized Scrum. Transformation challenges, we had some, because we have talented engineers, very, very talented engineers in such a company building such products. They tend to get into a paralysis by analysis. So a culture of experimentation, relying on empiricism, really helps. Tooling strategy is something we learned, that it's best to let the workers pick their tools, because they need to be the agile transformation and the tooling strategy need to be aligned. That's the point. And also individual learning and development, as far as the training is concerned, start an individual learning and development roadmap as early as possible in your agile transformation. The impact we had was across multiple fronts. We saved about 25% investment in engineering as a result of the transformation. Leadership was able to save up to 60% of their time, which they could then focus on the future state of the business. Having started a little later in the market, the company quickly is now established as a leader in the market space. So we were able to increase our speed to market and definitely be at the forefront of the industry. We launched a major shipment to a trade show internationally. After 12 months of the transformation, the company had booked 5x revenue. So these are various areas where we saw an impact of the change. The key takeaway here is that by allowing the organization to find its own emergent order, you are able to create a self-organizing, agile organization through the minimal principles of Scrum at Scale. Because Scrum at Scale addresses the system at a structural level, which results in the change in culture that you need, thereby unlocking business agility and also fast delivery of value, because you're now in a state where you're resolving and escalating impediments continuously as a complex adaptive system. So that's the case study. Thank you very much.